Hi, everybody. I want to pop in here and say thank you for getting in here early to attend our September Ed Talk. You're in the right spot. We're going to start at the top of the hour. We appreciate you making time for us to be here. As we begin to get started, you can go ahead and open up your chat windows. You can click the bottom toolbar at the lower end of your screen there, and the chat icon should launch for you. Pop in, let us know where in the world you're logging in from. We look forward to visiting with you all, and we will start officially at the top of the hour. Thank you. Well, everybody, I am showing the top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and recording. And we're just going to get started here. I value your time. I appreciate you being here. Now, before we begin, as indicated in the registration for the gathering today, by attending this Zoom webinar, you acknowledge that this session will be recorded and may be used for future UAGC presentations. So welcome, everyone. We know you have many choices when selecting your professional development, and there are many opportunities here at the University of Arizona Global Campus. So thank you for choosing us, Ed Talks. Ed Talks, here in the Department of Education and Liberal Arts. I'm Jackie Kiger. Excuse me, I'm going to be your host for today. Next slide, please. Today will be our 5th session of the year. So for those of you who are new to Ed Talks, well, this is not your traditional development webinar. Ed Talks are fashioned after TED Talks, the ever popular way of sharing concepts through personal storytelling. Our 2023 Ed Talk series is titled Sowing Seeds, which is inspired by the work of the UAGC faculty leader, Dr. Newton Miller. Now, this year's series introduces sowing and growing seeds as a metaphor for better understanding the relationship between the learner and the educator, or the seed and the sower. Each session examines principles through this lens to develop the mindset aimed at maximizing potential and promoting growth and achieving for learning in the online higher education environment. Today, Dr. Tisha Shipley is here to explore and extend our journey of sowing seeds with her story of how each seed, while it may be singular, but when we work together, the greatest growth happens. As you listen to Tisha's story, you might listen for your call to action to share your best practices that promote growth and support in a new way with your students or colleagues, or perhaps you'll find a new practice that Tisha's story sparks for you. Tisha, could you go ahead and come on camera and say hello, as I would like to introduce you?
Hi, everyone.
Now, this is likely going to be the shortest introduction in the history of Ed Talks by a host, as Tisha will be using part of her time today to take you on a journey of who she is and who she is becoming as we consider the growth of seed and working together. But let me just say, Dr. Shipley is a seasoned Ed Talker and has been a professor here at UAGC now for over 9 years. She holds a Doctor of Education in Curriculum Instruction from North Central University, and she holds both a master's degree in elementary education and administration and a bachelor's degree in early childhood from Northwestern Oklahoma State University, which, by the way, is home of the Rowdy Rangers mascot, which I believe, Tisha, that makes you a Rowdy Ranger. So Tisha enjoys spending time with her husband and is an avid sports fan, especially when it comes to her family and relative sports teams. And for those of you who know her well, you'll agree with me when I say she has a fondness for home decorating. So with that, Tisha, thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to ask that we remove our videos now so we can get started with a few brief reminders. Next slide, please. As a reminder, Ed Talks are fashioned after TED Talks, the ever popular way of sharing personal stories for only 18 minutes of monologue. We do this because we want to hear your stories, and we can best do this by sharing our stories. Our goal is not necessarily to teach you anything new, as you are already an expert in your field. Our goal is to perhaps motivate you to try something new in your approach to helping your students succeed. Our storytelling approach is geared to not take a lot of your time, but rather to simply set the stage for an interactive conversation and perhaps encourage you to encourage your students in some new way. At the end of our Ed Talk today, we look forward to hearing your story of what you're doing or will do in your classroom or educational setting. And after Tisha's story, we will invite you to participate to share your reflection and practices. So with that said, audience members, if you could please hold your comments and chat to the end. Tisha, the microphone is yours.
Okay, everyone, as we get started today, I want you to reflect on these 3 questions. What kind of student were you? Wouldn't you rather just sometimes do it yourself? And how do you sharpen your saw? So when Jesse and Jackie asked me to do an Ed Talk, I read the title in Dr. Newton Miller's book, Some Seeds Don't Grow. And then I was told that the chapter was The Greatest Growth Happens Together. And lots of things started popping into my head because I've worked with some of the most amazing teams that have helped me grow into a professional. And honestly, I would not be where I am today without the people that I've had in my past and in my present. So I've always been a little obsessive about doing things perfectly. I follow a very strict calendar every single day. And if you notice, this is a 2024 calendar and it's a 3-year. I work ahead. I don't understand when people are late, and I like to do projects or work when things and people are pretty perfect. And some would say that I'm an overachiever. But honestly, I don't really think that I'm an overachiever. And I don't want to be mean, but anyone who knows me knows that I am very black and white when it comes to situations, or truly the way that I see a situation at hand. When I was a student in college, the thought of missing any expectation would just make me sick to my stomach. I did not miss one college class in my bachelor's, my master's, or my doctorate degree, and I never once turned in a late paper. Maybe I could have. I never did because I just did what was expected of me. I sat on the front row in all my classes. I stayed after, I asked lots of questions, and I got that syllabus the very first day of class, and I completed all of my assignments in just a few weeks because I could not stand having things to do. It made me feel suffocated. But I was also a cheerleader, and I was on scholarship and had 2 jobs. So I truly did have to be organized. It's September right now, and I started working on this Ed Talk in January, because I work better when I have many projects going at once. I normally, if you can ask anybody on my team who has seen my screen, I have 20 tabs open on my computer at all times. My mind races all day long with thoughts and ideas of how and what I can do. And my desktop is always very messy. The IT desk here at UAGC, BTS, they always laugh at me. But this isn't always a good thing, because as I tell my husband, almost every single night I dream. And when I dream, it's always very vivid, and I'm working and I'm busy and I dream in color, and I'm always going. I have a hard time shutting my brain off. And some of you have probably gotten an email from me at 3 a.m. and that's after I've worked all day. And normally I like to work alone on most things. In college, when there was a group project, I didn't like it because I was always ending up doing the entire thing because others were just too slow for me. I need to get it finished and off my plate. But you may be wondering why I'm like this. I want to start with when I was younger. I always had to be the best. I grew up with a single, very young mother, as I've stated before, and she wanted perfection. I pretty much made everything I ever tried out for. I was always the head cheerleader. I always made show choir. I was the first flute in band. I was the president of Key Club, and I won just about every pageant that I was in. Because if I set my mind to it, I was going to do it. Truly, I was afraid of failure or not being successful. And honestly, I never wanted to disappoint my mother. I have always had big aspirations in my profession also. I knew when I started teaching that I needed more. I had to have more. So I got my master's degree. So I was a teacher who had taught everything from pre-K to 6th grade. Then I was a principal. And truly, I loved those jobs. But to me, I had to do more. I had to be more. So I got my doctorate degree. I've taught at 2 face-to-face universities. I was the coordinator of early childhood programs at one and the director of early childhood programs at another. But again, I needed more. I wanted more. So I moved here to UAGC. I needed to feel like I was making an impact. And when I started teaching here, I was the chair of the ECE admin program. And every day I thought about how I loved helping teachers. Honestly, just this morning, I did 2 loads of laundry while I was working. I unloaded the dishwasher, called my grandparents. And now as I sit here doing this Ed Talk, I'm looking at my windows and they need washed. I mean, I have to stay busy. I have to be doing something all the time. And when I do it, it has to be perfect. I just like perfection. But when you demand perfection, you're disappointed most of the time, right? Because truly, is anyone perfect? And I think we can all say the answer to that is no. So I just talked about myself a lot, but I also want you to know that my mother was and is my biggest supporter, cheerleader, and pusher. She pushed me a lot growing up. She still does. Her voice is always in the back of my head. This is where other people come in. I had to have help in areas of my life. I can't do everything on my own. Even though most of the time I want to, because it's easier for me and it will be done right, I can't do it. But I tell you this because I want you to know who I am, because this next part is the most important part. I'm going to focus on why I can't do things alone and why I have changed so much as a teacher and why having a group or a team is sometimes better. Now, I haven't changed in the big ideas and the huge projects that I want to do, but I've changed in other ways. And I can tell you I have done many huge projects that needed to be perfect. Just for an example, I started a resource library at one of my face-to-face universities. I wrote a $1.5 million grant. I was awarded the grant. I started that library and it's still going today. But I couldn't have done that alone. I had teachers supporting me and helping me, and I still look to those people today. But my next project is one of the biggest projects that I'm most proud of. Over a slice of pizza, Tony said I could try. Now, the pizza was pepperoni, and Tony is Dr. Tony Farrell, the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. You may have heard this story about 101 times. I had this big idea of starting an early childhood conference here at UAGC. I decided I was just going to ask him. So I truly did corner him at a pizza place in San Diego. Let me tell you, though, it was not without tears, heartache, and a gazillion hours of work, because I knew before I asked Tony, I had to have my ducks in a row. I had to know the where, the when, the why, the how, and the who. And these were all questions that had to be perfect. And Tony didn't ask me any of these. I just knew I had to be ready. So some of those were unclear then, and still today, 7 years later, we're still trying to figure it out every year, because it's always different, but it's always worth it. My ideas are normally huge. It can be from how I decorate for Christmas. And by the way, I had 17 themed trees in my house last year. And altogether, I decorated 38 trees for other people. And this goes on to how I want things done in my classroom, how I teach. And my ideas always start out very small, but they grow into huge ideas. So Dr. Stephanie Hild and I started that Slice of Pizza conference year one, and it was very small, but we were so happy. This was the 7th year and the best year, and we had more people involved and more people were helping us, and it was amazing. That outreach that started with the Slice of Pizza, so going back to the title of this Ed Talk, which is Sowing Seeds, the Greatest Growth Happens Together, I couldn't have done what we do alone. It is one of the only free early childhood conferences out there. It has grown into something that I could have never imagined. We now have a YouTube channel, a website, a podcast, a student club, and we are developing an early childhood center, all because of that idea that Tony said yes to. I've truly never seen an early childhood community like the one we have here. So this time I just said we a lot. This is what I mean by mostly I like to do things alone, but I cannot do everything alone because I need help and I need support. And it is very hard for me to give away what I love to do. You can ask anyone on my team, but I know I need to do it sometimes. And I know for a fact it is better when others are helping me. I tell you all of these things to say that I would not be where I am without the support, the guidance, the love, and the help from others. But I also tell you all of these things because I have changed in the last 9 years I've been here. Our students can't do it without the support, the guidance, the love, and the help from others. Now, I'm still very hard on myself. I want perfection from me, but I have learned that not everyone is like me. Not everyone thinks, feels, wants, or needs what I want or is in my shoes. I can, though, come from a place of not truly understanding how others feel or what they want or need, but still have the empathy, the compassion, and I can build a trusting relationship with them. The culture of care is so important for our students. There are many times that I know exactly how a student is feeling or what they are going through. Because if you've heard my previous ed talks, I talked about my best friend suddenly passing away, my brother getting jumped by a gang and stabbed 27 times and almost dying, my mother having breast cancer and her diagnosis with MS. So I do have compassion, and I do have things that have happened to me. These are things that have happened to me in my life, though. That's not who I am. This has happened to me. And these are things that are happening to our students also. But in all of these instances, guess what? I still had my computer with me working. I never missed a deadline because I couldn't, because I am that perfectionist that could not do it. But there wasn't a culture of care for me. What if there would have been? Think back to all of the things I told you about myself. Because truly, sometimes I wonder, how can people turn things in late? Again, I would be so stressed out even thinking about not having my work completed. But I have students that sometimes don't even show up to the discussion boards, or they don't turn in their assignment. It's hard for me to wrap my head around those things because I'm not that way. And maybe you're thinking the same thing that I think, and you're like me. But several years ago, I decided that not everyone's like me, like I said before. Imagine that. And I had to change how I did things and how I worked with my students. Some of you listening are probably like me, and that's okay. But being in this group and having the professional development we have had, like the growth mindset, the poverty training, Franklin Covey's change, the multiplier training, and just learning about my students and talking to them and getting to know where they come from and what they need from me truly changed my thinking. A culture of care does not mean I do not care and I'm looking the other way. A culture of care means that I'm looking you in the eye. I'm working with you for your specific reason. I am telling you that I know you are human and that I care about you. It means we are growing as professionals because the world is different than when I went to school. But I still think about, it would have been nice to have the culture of care when I was in school. Because I wonder what would have happened if someone would have done that for me. Would I still be like I am today? Would I still have panic inside me to do things quickly and never be late or never have issues? And would I still be a perfectionist? But to be successful in my classroom, I needed to encompass the culture of care. I need to continually self-reflect, learn from others, listen, and attend that relevant professional development. So some things we do really well here at UAGC and Dr. Miller mentions in his book are a shared vision and mission, sharing responsibility and decision-making, and the caring of our students. They are always at the forefront of what our meetings and our teaching is about. In this chapter, Dr. Miller also talks about professional development, and we're really good at that here at UAGC. The Department of Education and Liberal Arts as a whole has a tremendous professional development each year. We have the opportunity to go to graduation and build relationships while partaking in the wonderful professional development. Every month we have Ed Talks. Every month we have an early childhood series. Once a year we have an early childhood conference. We have a podcast and a YouTube channel. We have a book club and a look club. And that isn't even mentioning the professional development that UAGC gives as a whole community. So I ask you, how are you sharpening your saw? After 10 or 15, even 20 years of experience, how do you continue to better and be better for your students? Is the professional development you are attending relevant to what you want to do and know for your students? Is there more out there that can keep you current in your practices or your content? Does what you know help you build that culture of care in your classroom? Because if not, maybe it's time to check into something that will help you, that makes you excited. Professional development is vital to you continuing to learn and teach your students. Dr. Miller mentions a few studies in this chapter that deal with students and their professors and the professional development that their professors attended. The professional development reflected in their teaching and how the students learn and how they performed because they were involved in this professional development. It could have been reading a book, watching a video, attending a conference, or just having a professional conversation. So ask yourself this: what opportunities are you seeking to cultivate yourself and sharpen your saw? It's really important for us to model for our students how we are professionals and lifelong learners. and that begins with the culture of care. There are many avenues that you can take for PD. And for example, I love to be involved in writing. So I try to write for an education blog pretty often. So I share relevant articles when appropriate in my courses, and I want my students to know that I care about their learning and that I continue to grow as a person and a professional. I have all sorts of professional early childhood social media that I share with my students that provide them with resources and tips and tricks and ideas and important things happening out in the world of education. So I'm always trying to do more and be more for my students. I have to build that community not only at UAGC, but also outside and learn from other professionals too, because that makes me a better instructor. So I want you to think about yourself. Who are you? Are you that overachiever? Do you panic when things aren't perfect? Is it hard for you to identify with your students being late or not reaching out to you, or just not doing their assignment? Did you grow up and were you learning when there was no culture of care? Think about this. What if you had the culture of care when you were in school or as a young person? Do you think you would have used it or asked for help? Maybe felt more at ease without all that panic? Or can you think of a time that the culture of care could have impacted you as a student when you were in school? How do you want your children, your grandchildren, or someone you love treated? Do you want them to be treated with the culture of care? So let's begin with the end in mind and go back to that slice of pizza. It was just a slice of pizza, and now it's a pizza parlor. So I told you who I am, and I want to mention really quick that last month I was talking to Dr. Stephanie Hild, and I said, okay, Steph, I want to add something new to our early childhood community. It's time. What about doing a TikTok? And I'm not kidding you. You can ask her. She hung up on me. But I know she's going to get on board because I can't do it alone. So I know she'll call me back because my team makes me better. Dr. Hild and I could not do what we do without each other. She makes me better, and I bet you a penny that if you asked her today, she would say the same about me because we complement each other and we care about our students and we want more for them. One of my favorite things to do at the end of class is to read the course evaluations. Of course, it feels good to know what I'm doing right, but there's also that opportunity to grow and do better. Dr. Newton Miller mentions in Chapter 8 that we need to take time to reflect upon our experiences, learn from them, admit what we need to change, look at where we need to grow, and make those adjustments. It's exactly everything that I've said in this talk. I admitted that I needed to change my teaching practices because not all students are like me. I need to do what is best for them. I love attending professional development. I have changed my classes to encompass all facets of culture of care. But I had to take it upon myself and to make sure that I was growing. So what was your experience growing up? What can you admit that you need to change? And where do you need to grow? Is there anyone out there that can help you grow? Who is your team and who are your people? Ask yourself that. That's so important. And after you ask yourself those things, what is another component of the culture of care you can add to your course? How will you show your passions with your students? And how can your team or your people help you do that? Thank you for your time, everyone. Back to you, Jackie.
Slide, please. And thank you, Tisha. I really appreciate getting this firsthand look. I'm wondering why you perhaps weren't an Eagle Scout, because you're certainly prepared and you would have done well. You mentioned that when we demand perfection, we'll likely be disappointed. And demanding perfection, when we think about our students here at UAGC, we want them to be their very best. But when I think about that demand, that's really not something a professional does. And I think there's a difference between seeking that perfection and being that professional. And we've seen it here, the professional. And I can tell our audience that I've attended Tisha and Steph's early childhood conferences, and I've attended their podcasts, and I've worked with Tisha these past 9 years. And I can tell you she's all in. The epitome of a professional who wants their student to be their very best and be excited about what excites them. And for me, the lesson here as I listen along, it's not me getting students to do things the way I would have them do them. It's helping students find that path that works for them in what is inevitably change. And the purpose of this talk today was an internal look at change as professionals. We're not suggesting that you go out and start a conference, but we are suggesting that you take time for yourself and not try to do your teaching alone. Now consider that. Consider that professional development. The many things that we have here at the university, the CEDL, the Early Childhood Conference. I don't have a background in early childhood. I do not teach in early childhood, but I recommend you go to that Early Childhood Conference, as I do. The UAGC Teaching and Learning Conference we have every fall. The upcoming Culture of Care Summit, something new we're going to be having in the spring. Sharpen that saw. It's not enough for us to sit here, having done this for 20 years, without 20 years worth of experience, of 20 years worth of growth. It reminds me of our dean, Dr. Tony Farrell, when this year he framed the College of Arts and Sciences this year as our vision and our approach to the vision of our college of what he considered the 5 C's: culture, change, collaboration, care, and celebration. And what we've heard here today, the first 2 C's, culture and change. We all come from different places. We all have a way that we approach things. It's the culture from which we come to the place of which we teach in this teaching culture. So we bring who we are to that. Sometimes that works well. Sometimes it works wonderfully. Every time, though, it probably requires of us that we change. So, Tisha, thank you for the vulnerability of sharing yourself with us in this online medium. The things, they're not always as they appear. We need to dig deeper with our students. That our approach to our expectations and that differentiation considers the things that we see, and more importantly, the things that we may not see with our students, and the things that we know, and more importantly, the things that we may not know. For those of you here today, we're going to open up the chat lines to consider your takeaways from today's story. So let's frame our discussions around the idea of the greatest growth happening together. Think about that in your classroom. Consider these 3 questions on the screen as we reflect on our own teaching practices, looking through that lens of sowing seeds and supporting student success. Please go ahead, start sharing your impressions, your ideas, and perhaps your new approaches in the chat. And be sure your chat is set to everyone. We would also love to hear from you, to share with us your audio. To share with us using your audio, simply you can raise your hand, and using the hand icon at the bottom of your screen, should be at the bottom of your screen, you will then be given the opportunity to unmute your microphone and share your story or your reflection from today. We invite you to join the conversation now, inspiring others with your story.
Hey, Jackie, can I jump on for a second?
Yes, please.
Because Dr. Olson Stewart shared a really great story that we have to share about who we are as teachers and as professionals with our students. I always tell my students, one, I'm a co-learner right along with you. I'm learning from you, you're learning from me, and that I've been in your shoes because we've all been where they are. And her story that she shared with her student, if you can see that in the chat box, is amazing. And Dr. Olson Stewart, I have the exact same story. So I love that you shared that. Thank you. It's critical that we show them we're real people.
Thank you, Tisha. And thank you, Kelly, for sharing that in the chat with us. I see Jesse has mentioned Dr. Newton Miller's book, which has been our guiding light this year with our Ed Talks in Sowing Seeds, and that we have a choice in the type of collaborative growth as our approach, a top-down approach or a professional learning community. We have many opportunities to expand that. And to Tisha's point, is always be in a position to sharpen that saw. As good as you are, as good as I am, I should probably be in a position to sharpen my saw.
Dr. Reef, I agree with you 100%. That is one of the reasons I said I had to change who I was. I had to start knowing that all of these things have happened to me. They also happen to our students. We have to realize that. We have to recognize that. And the culture of care, again, and Jackie and I talked about this, it's looking you in the eye. It's telling you, I care about you. I care about your situation. What can we do to help? How can we fix this? Whatever is going on, the problem or the issue or the situation, what can we do to help? And I will tell you, just yesterday, I was talking on the phone with one of my students, and she's had a really, really hard time the last several weeks. And I gave her the resources here at UAGC with the peer-to-peer counseling and the different things. And she was so thankful because we have so many resources here at UAGC to share with our students. And she was very appreciative.
Absolutely. And I'm reminded of the phrase, maybe I shouldn't say it, the phrase by Dr. Phil. How's that working for you? Because students will come to us and I won't hear the crisis. I'll hear the crisis, but it just won't be as, I'm like, sounds like time management. And then I make it sound all easy peasy. This is what you need to do. But that doesn't make it easy peasy for them. And for me, when I think about culture of care, it's getting you through the place of, and I teach graduate courses, of being that graduate student who maybe on the front end, as Tisha said, had that internal panic, and that compromised what they thought they were going to be able to do. But you work with that student so that they can be aware and overcome and have a new plan. The key is every time have a new plan, because when things start to go south, and I tell my students this, that the original approach to how you thought you were going to be successful might have to be reevaluated so that you can absolutely be successful.
Dr. Lopez, yes. I feel like that's one thing that we do really good here. We're very intentional about everything that we share with our students. I think that's why I wanted to bring the Early Childhood Conference and the entire community up, is because we're very intentional about what we put out there, about the speakers that we try to get, about the information that we share with them. And our center is going to be really amazing that has all of those great resources also, because we do want to have intention behind everything we share with them.
And Holly Orso mentions she shares her failures with her students when she was in the high school biology class. And you know what? It just makes us real to them. It doesn't give anybody a free pass. What I hope it does, and Holly, I'm sure it does with your example, is it makes everybody comfortable. It makes everybody realize that you are approachable. And as I've shared 1,000 times in Ed Talks, that I'll send my students an email at the beginning. If you don't quit, I won't quit. And then I kind of break down what that really means, and that I'm there for them, but I need them to be there for them too. You can't just be me doing it. And so we kick that around in week 1. And more times than not, the caring culture is showing the student maybe they're looking at something that they need to look at a little bit differently. And seems to work. And again, they're not going to do any of that if they don't feel they can approach you. So Holly, thanks for saying that.
Haley, I'm glad that you could understand that. Jackie and I actually talked about this. Do I put out there what it's like sometimes to have to, confront students that are late? But, a lot of them, once you reach out to them, they're going to be more apt to call you and reach out to you and let you know what's going on. I think sometimes when we're just behind a computer screen, it's scary for them to reach out to us, to call us, to text us, or even email us and tell us about a situation. But when that relationship has been built, then they do feel better about talking and telling us the situations that they're in. And a lot of people are talking about that relationship in the chat box, which we know is very, very important.
And Eva, I love what you said. There's an open door for communication. And, people, I used to hear this all the time in the military. I have an open door policy. Well, then why is your door shut? I don't feel like I can come in. And so with our students, we can't just communicate that we have an open door policy, if you will. There needs to be a light that they can see shining in the doorway so that they know it's a safe place. It's a good place. It's a place, it's their place. I just happen to be standing in it as part of their educational journey.
Someone asked, what should we do if they don't open up or reach back out when we contact them? We may all have a different way that we do this, but I will tell you, and if you've been here and heard me before, the very first week of all my classes, I go through Signals and I call every single one of my students. If they do not answer, which they may not because they have a job or they're at work, I leave a message or I send them a short text message that just says, no need to call me back. I just wanted you to have my phone number. And I also want you to know I wanted to welcome you and just say hello. That first week, I truly don't have that many students who just don't ever call me or even text me back because of that open line of communication that first week of class. So maybe that's something you try. If there is that situation, there could be something going on. So I always reach out to the advisor. Jackie, you might have something else, or someone in the chat box might have a different idea that they use.
Absolutely. I would encourage everybody to go back. I think it's 2, maybe 3 Ed Talks ago this year when Tay Ashante shared with us. She gave a beautiful story about how our new incomplete policy landed right in the middle of her fixing to go into Christmas break. And she had to make some tough decisions about, I hadn't heard from you all semester, and now I'm hearing from you weeks after the course is closed. And, and at some point you could call it and say, well, I'm my door's shut, I'm not helping. But I would encourage you to go back and listen to that Ed Talk, because she does a very good job of showing why that policy or incomplete policy is a good one for our students in those occasions. Well, in many occasions, but in this example where somebody's asking about what if a student doesn't reach out, you'd be surprised, or I have found how surprised I am that if I'll just go ahead and engage it and encourage it and not wait for them, if you're missing in action, I'm probably going to come find you. I'm not going to ask you to, whatever crisis mode you're already in, to remember your instructor. I'm probably not going to do that. I'm probably going to try and find you. And at least to answer in the chat here, to at least so that I'll know there's a lifeline out there. They don't have to look up my email. They just need to go reply to the email that's there. And that's probably what I would encourage everyone to at least be in that position. So when they're not reaching out, that that you've sent that communication lifeline.
And to piggyback on that, I don't let it get past the first week. If I see things are kind of happening, I make sure to reach out, and then I reach out again and I reach out again. I'm not going to let them fall through that crack and wait until the 5th or 6th week, depending on what I'm teaching. If you reach out in the very beginning, you're going to have more success getting them to come in. Yes. How can I assist you? Yes. I always say, how can I help you? And I actually let them come up with, I say, okay, so this assignment needs to be late. When is a good due date for you? When can you have it back to me by? And almost always they have it back to me the date they tell me they're going to.
So keeping in the spirit of our Ed Talk today about kind of sharpening your own saw of looking around for that network of folks, that network of professional development, you know, these questions we're having here are great questions to bring up in other places when you're in the university sponsored training, professional developments. Certainly take advantage of that. And you know, I want to honor everybody's time, and our time is winding down here. And as you know, all good things must come to an end. So next slide, please, Tisha. Please watch the chat box or your screen for a link to the Ed Talk homepage, where this recorded Ed Talk and Tay's Ed Talk, remember, you're going to go back and watch that, will be archived for future viewing, along with certificates of participation. We'll also find, you'll find that there's a link to the Ed Talk homepage that was in today's invitation to you. Next slide, please. Please join us next month, October the 12th, as Dr. Newton Miller, the author of our book, Why Some Seeds Won't Grow, as he shares his story about rotating the crops and planning the next season. We thank you for joining us today. A huge thank you to our very own Dr. Tisha Shipley for sharing with us today to inspire our next steps in supporting our students and one another. On behalf of the Assistant Dean, Dr. Denise Maxwell, and UAGC's College of Arts and Sciences, Department of Education and Liberal Arts, we wish you a safe, healthy, and impactful month of September, and we'll see you all next month. Thank you.